Yeah, it just
No,
sank
that
right
didn't
there.
really that didn't really work.
Yeah. If we want to move on to the crux of it, which so much depends on this, which is interest rates. And I think that this past week was, again, it was particularly interesting because of the whiplash from one to the other. I think that there's a lot of things and a lot of implications for the apartment market when you're talking about interest rates. But I'd love to discuss some of the major ones here with you.
Man, we could do a
yeah.
whole episode just talking about. But there's so many aspects of this. I mean, just one which we're not going to talk about today. I'm just going to mention it right now. Then we move on. But just the quality of data. Ancillary to this story is the head of the BLS was fired because essentially, or the Trump administration, the books have been cooked and that they made it look bad for the Trump administration. But really, I think the story was that was the headline. The reality is they're saying you've given us horrible numbers in statistics for the last at least 3 quarters, for the last multiple years. These statistics have been revised, and but we're making critical decisions. The Federal Reserve decided, trying to thread a needle here and conduct monetary policy, but the data is not accurate. I mean, we thought we had added hundreds of thousands of jobs, and it turns out we only added 35,000 jobs. I mean, that's not even enough to keep up with the population growth, which is a completely different picture than had been presented in the Federal Reserve had made their rate decisions on to hold steady. So, this goes, and what we've talked about a little bit in the past when we've talked about CPI. We're making all of these decisions based on these statistics that we really, empirically, at least from my perspective, Matt, aren't that great of quality. The quality is pretty low, but everyone treats them as the gold standard. Are they truly the gold standard? I think that's the overarching thing that I'm continuing to think about. But let's just take it all for what it's worth and just look at where we are. We had a weak jobs report after the decision to keep rates steady. And how is that going to impact potential for rate cuts in the future? Because that's going to be huge for multifamily, as we just discussed.
Yeah, I have a few ideas about this, about the BLS and the information gathered by the government.
Because we haven't really had a chance to talk about this since
I think that
and all that.
I think that the firing is it's still going to raise questions over. Well, I don't think she was. This BLS official was fired because the data wasn't quick enough. I think it was because the data reflected poorly and it didn't reflect strong enough. It wasn't giving the right message of economic strength. And I think that firing it in this way opens up the idea of, well, maybe this is political pressure. And and I put it in a similar box of the pressure to fire Jerome Powell because he's not cutting interest rates quickly enough. The irony here is that the weak jobs report maybe makes it a little bit easier to cut rates, but let's have both. Let's fire Powell and put in someone that'll cut rates, and then let's give someone the information. I think that the government, for as flawed as it is, a lot of this revisions where it was due to they didn't get the submissions for the surveys in time. There were some structural issues. I don't know enough about data gathering to comment substantively on this. Only that it is an enormous apparatus. I think that the enormity of it makes it very difficult to rig in the way that's perhaps suggested. I think that there is no more accurate or the combination of accuracy and comprehensiveness, the data gathering that happens in the United States, that's pretty good. And I'd rather have the power of the United States behind that data gathering than like a private corporation. I think there's a lot of people that rely on these numbers, and as bad as they are, because they do get revised or whatever, I think that they have operated for a fairly long time, and maybe it's personal, but there'd be a lot of information that businesses rely on that if they lose faith in it, then I think that's not a good thing. There's a lot of money that depends on it and a lot of money that's generated from things like the permits and starts data for housing. It may not be perfect, but tons of people are drawing on this information and deciding where to invest or what to do or what to buy and sell. So That's like my little piece. I just don't see the alternative. Is it like a kind of cornucopia of little different data sources on everything from like copper prices to corn futures or whatever? I mean,
let me ask you this, Matt. Let me stop you. Okay.
Yeah.
When you, Matt Bosnacker, you're going to go figure out what the rent growth is in a market or nationally, where do you go look?
Well, you're right.
Do you go look at CPI?
See, I don't think that, but like,
why do you look at RealPage, you look at Apartment List, you look at Yardi, you look at diversified sources, and this is such a specific example, Matt, you aggregate them. We do our own research to find a more accurate result instead of relying on the CPI. And there are multiple employment agencies that do their own surveys of employment that are much more accurate. Why do we need to rely, and why are we using the government source, which is wrong and flawed, just because it has a government stamp on it? It's like American cheese. Like that's what we should eat.
Yeah, I think that
I'm gonna have some Vermont cheddar. I'm sorry.
I think that
you can take the Kraft single. You can take the American, cheese all day long, but there are better products of data and information that are out there. And I think this idea, they've done a bad job. I get it. The optics look horrible. Like, and that's where it's like the Trump administration, sometimes it's like they decide to shoot themselves in the foot. Because it's like we're firing them because it doesn't, like, we think that we want to show that we have a strong economy. That's not the message. The message is they've done a bad job, and it's creating material risks to our economy. We made a critical decision for the macroeconomy this last week off of flawed data.
I'd like to compare the ADP
I think it's
numbers
pretty bad
for the jobs numbers. I'd like to see how the ADP numbers compare because I'm not sure of. I just don't know enough about how these have been accurate. The fact of these revisions may be a structural fact. It may be policy that, like, yeah, we think that it is different because they did raise alarm bells. They're like, there will likely be revisions to this data, but because of some rule they probably had, they had to give it time. I believe what you want. I think that the government,
ADP, so the ADP uses actual payrolls. They're running the payroll. It's like using like RealPage data or Yardi Matrix data. They're running the payrolls. They see how many people are hiring. There are other payroll services that we can do the same from and aggregate that data. The BLS, the way that they do this, Matt, is they send a physical letter out on weird stationery that shows up at your office. We've received them. I've looked at them like, what? You're supposed to fill out this like 10-page government survey. It's the most inefficient thing of all time.
Yeah,
and so and what they're saying is, what the Trump, and I'm not here to defend the Trump administration like at all. But what they're saying is we need to relook at how we're doing these statistics. Like, we should be doing these statistics in a more modern way, and the entire BLS needs to be reorganized, which I agree. I think we've been complaining about this government data. They just took the year off for COVID, Matt. They just stopped reporting. Like, why? Like that, we as the greatest country in the world, for whatever that means, we should have data that is consistent and accurate, and we have private organizations that are doing it. So maybe we could have a government organization that's that's aggregating that private information and making reports. But
yeah, I think
what we've been doing hasn't been working.
We can talk about like the maybe doing it their methods of gathering the data. I think that as a data source, government, you can vote them out. As a data source, ADP, I know there's a market that you can use, but it's a less direct. There's there's a little bit of a question on some of the data sources.
You can't vote out these bureaucrats, Matt, in some of these agencies. You can choose to use a different private source, and you can, Matt. We make our own data. You and I, you personally, with John Chapman, myself, and the Great Capital team, we've done our own research. We do. Why do we do what we do? We just let government do all that work for us.
I've done a little bit of reading, not a whole lot at all, but I just know that there are standards in there, and they may be bureaucratic, and they may lead to a great deal of delay. But I'm guessing that there's a lot of standards that are in the interest of accuracy. And I don't know. I just I feel like
it doesn't seem very accurate.
Well, it's slow.
I'm just saying we're spending all this money. We're spending all this money. Like, it's not cheap. There's multiple buildings of these people that are apparently putting statistics together, and we can get like a small handful, and we can probably produce better information.
And ADP is doing it and figure out what the
ADP is doing it as a side gig. ADP is doing it as a side gig. They've probably got like I don't know. They've probably got 10 guys in the corner office. I mean, they're slanging payroll software. They're running payroll.
I do think that there's probably some other way that they could figure that one out rather than surveys. But yeah, that's that kind of leads me into and I'm glad I had this discussion, because I'm going to be thinking about this afterwards and really digging into what were the reasons behind this revision, and was it related to kind of structural rules? Was it related to other kind of factors that they didn't know beforehand that they're factoring in now? And I'll have a better answer, and there probably is an answer out there, and I apologize for not knowing that. I just still have
come back with an answer that's not the New York Times headline, man.
Right. All right. Yeah. That's fine. I appreciate this. I like to hash this. Out, because that's one of the things that I was talking to people. It's like, well, do you trust the government where they have their own, set of rules and incentives, or, what would the alternative look like? And I think, I just think it's a really interesting, because one of the things that government does, other than collecting taxes, is collect and process a great deal of information. And so it does. I think there's an intuitive sense that what you said is right. Like, why can't it be more accurate? They have all these people, they're collecting taxes really well. So why can't they transfer that to the kind of other information? And maybe I'll learn that, there's a lot of stuff that they do